As most of you know, we've been discussing this issue since our summer meeting of last year, and now we are ready for a vote. Before that, I'll turn things over to the sponsor of the model, Representative Bart Rowland, of Kentucky, for some brief remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm proud to sponsor this model, and I really appreciate everyone's work on it throughout the process. You can view the model on the website and on the app, and it also appears in your binders on page 134. This really was a collaborative and deliberative process as we started with a draft that looked a lot like the Kentucky Sandbox Law that we passed a couple of years ago, but we made some changes based upon feedback from both legislators and interested parties. So just to reiterate for those who may be new to the discussion, this model and the similar sandbox laws across the country permit the Department of Insurance to waive certain regulatory and statutory requirements with the main goal of reducing hurdles for companies that want to introduce new concepts and products at the same speed as insurance technology develops. Several states have adopted these types of laws, and I believe that with the NCOIL model passing, it will serve as a spark for more states to do the same thing. That's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to taking a vote.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any interested persons wishing to comment on the model? I see J.P. Weiss.
J.P. Weiss with the American InsurTech Council. Just want to indicate our support for the model. The work that's been done on this has been fantastic. So we look forward to hopefully a favorable vote and seeing it in the state. So thank you.
Yes, Reese MP with the Libertas Institute. This is 2 years in the making. Thankful to be part of this process and look forward to a favorable vote and hopefully some states adopting similar models. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Wes Bissett with the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America. Just want to echo the comments made by the two gentlemen a moment ago and thank Representative Rowland for his leadership on this, both in Kentucky and now at the national stage. So thanks very much. Really appreciate the work that's gone into this. I think it's been a labor of love for the representative and would also urge a favorable vote this morning. Thank you.
All right. Any other interested person? If not, I entertain any comments from any legislators.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. West Virginia passed this a couple of years ago, following Kentucky's lead and pretty much did Kentucky's bill. I'm glad to see that other states possibly can do this. I think it's a great thing for insurance, so thank you.
All right. Any other comments from any other legislators? All right, if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the model.
Move adoption.
Entertain a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Model is adopted. This model will now be placed on the consent calendar for ratification during the executive committee meeting that we'll have tomorrow. All right. Now we'll move on to the discussion on the development and use of environmental, social, and governance, or ESG scores. This is a topic that I'm very interested in, and I hope NCOIL will continue to discuss this going forward. Today's speakers will be able to provide us with a high-level overview on how their respective organizations use ESG scores. With us today we have Peter Giancone. Did I pronounce that correctly or close? Yep. All right. Senior Director at Kroll Bond Rating Agency, and Dave Carlson, the Managing Director of the U.S. Manufacturing and Automotive Industry Practice at Marsh. And then we'll hear from both of them and hold questions until the end. So, Mr. Giancone, you can start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to be here today and share the views of my firm. For those who are not aware, KBRA, or Kroll Bond Rating Agency, is one of the newer rating agencies that serves the capital markets. We were founded 11 years ago by Jules Kroll. Some people confuse us with Kroll, the investigation firm. We are not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. Same founder, Jules Kroll, but a very different entity. We are at NRSRO, which makes effectively the equivalent of providing the sort of service to the capital markets, such as S&P, AM Best, who I'm sure everyone in this room is familiar with, Moody's, Fitch, and so on. So we are a peer of those companies and have, over the last, we've expanded our practice quite dramatically. When I joined the company back in about 7 years ago, we had 170 employees. We are now up to over 500. We are a global firm covering every major asset class in the credit markets, CMBS, RMBS, everything in the structured finance side that you can think of, as well as on the corporate and financial institutions and government side as well. We have a huge public finance practice. We rate many of the states sitting in this room today, as well as many of the municipalities within those states. And finally, the area that's near and dear to my heart, which is the insurance practice, and that's the part that I'm responsible for. I'm the global head of insurance ratings for KBRA, which means that we provide financial strength ratings currently for to over 150 companies, some published, some mostly published, some that are unpublished, and you can go to our website and take a look at those anytime. And the coverage of our firm across the capital markets is quite extensive. And in fact, in the SECs, because we are an NRSRO and regulated by the SEC, this most recent, every year the SEC puts out a report. And in that report, they talk about, the state of the credit rating agency market, and they list all of the companies. And this most recent year, they made a change in the way they describe the market. One is they used to have sort of the big three, S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, and everybody else. This year, they sort of fine-tuned their categorization to say, okay, well, we have the big three, and then we have the medium-sized firms, and those are AM Best, KBRA, and DBRS, and then you have everyone else after that. So we rate probably over $2 trillion of paper in the capital markets, so we are a major player there. Some folks still have not heard of us, but we are a rapidly growing firm, and the opportunity to come in here and speak to you today about the approach that we've taken on ESG is one of the reasons we have grown so fast, because our growth in ESG and the approach to it is very similar to the way we approach credit ratings more generally, which is on a more holistic basis and providing a different perspective. So looking at our insurance practice, as I mentioned, we have over 150 ratings. That covers everything from small fraternals out in the Midwest all the way up to Lloyd's of London. And I mentioned Lloyd's of London because they added us as a fourth rating agency to provide a different perspective on credit. So moving to ESG, it is a big topic. It is in the news pretty much every day. And when we set out to look at how KBRA as a firm was going to address this issue, because our constituents, which are policyholders in the case of insurance financial strength ratings, and more broadly investors in the case of the credit ratings that we provide, we went out and asked them, specifically investors, and said, okay, this ESG thing seems to be pretty big. What would you like us to do? What would be helpful to you? And the first thing they said to us is, no scores. You're credit analysts. You are not in the business of coming up with value-based judgments around ESG. We don't need another set of scores out there. What we need is maybe for you to incorporate into your credit ratings, but please don't provide another score. So we have took that to heart, and so our approach to ESG is to look at it through the lens of ESG management. And by the way, I should mention, if this is for the record, that all of our methodologies and a lot of the comments I'm making today regarding ESG and our credit ratings more broadly are all available free of charge on our website, kbra.com. I'd encourage everyone in this room who covers the insurance industry at least to go and register with our website. You can get notifications for free of everything that we're doing, and you can check off when you register what areas you're interested in. So not just insurance, but other areas, and certainly ESG is another area. So if you're interested in what we're publishing on these topics, please go to our website, and the vast majority of that stuff can be obtained free of charge, including our approach to ESG, and we've been publishing a lot on this topic. So stepping back, how do we look at ESG? Again, we look at it from insurance companies specifically, and this is again even broader across our whole firm, is based on ESG management. Okay, so whether it's environmental, social, governance, and all of those things, we believe these are management issues for organizations, whether they be municipalities, whether they be insurance companies, to manage as they do any other risk. Okay, so when we think about our approach to this, we go through a very diligent, very detailed due diligence process, and we ask our companies, what does climate change, what impact does this have with respect to your business? When it comes to social, we tend to focus on stakeholders. What are your stakeholders demanding of you? What are they asking of you? Who are your stakeholders, first of all, and what are they maybe asking on these issues? And when it comes to governance, we tend to focus mostly on cybersecurity, because and all three of these, frankly, are very broad topics, but we've tried to focus on just the three as I've described. So when we talk about environmental, we tend to focus mostly on climate change. When we go to social issues, we tend to think more in terms of stakeholder and transition risks. And when we go to governance, we tend to focus primarily on cyber. But again, we do not do scores. We don't think it's our job as a rating agency to make value-based judgments on these topics. These are very important topics. I'm not disputing that. I think most in the market would agree. But our job is to talk about credit. So when I put a single A rating on an insurance company, that is a very specific meaning, okay? It means the probability of default over a specified time period. And you might ask, well, where did you come up with those numbers? 80 years of corporate default data is where I came up with it. I didn't just make it up. I went to the statistics and I came up with that. And so the whole market understands when I say single A, what that means, what that implies with respect to probability of default. Now, if you step back to an ESG score, and there are lots of them floating around out there, and my competitors, none of whom are here today, but so I can talk about them, a lot of them have come up with these scoring rubrics and have assessed those scores, and perhaps most damaging to the market, have actually then taken those scores and then linked them to their credit rating process. And that we feel is improper and inappropriate for the simple reason that it does not, there is no data to support most of those scores. There's certainly no 80 years of corporate default data, and we think it's very misleading. And we think it's a lot of, if you ask me quite honestly, I think a lot of those scores are just frankly made up. And so we're not in the business of making up scores, we're in the business of assessing credit risk and providing those signals to the market based on real data and real research and real analysis. So we've tended to step back. We don't say these issues are not important, they are, but when it comes to insurance companies specifically, and even more broadly, we incorporate them in the context of ESG management, and with insurance companies specifically ESG risk management. And so if you go to, again, our website and you pull any of the published reports that we have on an insurance company that's rated by KBRA, in fact, on any entity that is rated by KBRA or any bond rated by KBRA, there will be a section in that report at the back or maybe in the front, depending on how relevant it is, that talks about E, S, and G, but qualitatively. And specifically what aspects of those three topics might have a linkage in some degree, shape, or form to credit risk, and what our assessment of the credit of that company or entity is. So, in conclusion, I'm going to turn over to my colleague here who has some more prepared remarks and has some things that they do at Marsh to kind of help get some ideas, get some concrete assessment of these things together, which I think is certainly helpful to the market. But from a rating agency perspective, we don't feel it's our place to make value-based judgment. It's not for us to tell you, oh, well, here's how many folks of color or how many women or any diversity you should have on your board in order to achieve a certain credit rating. That's not our business. Maybe having a diverse board is a very good thing, but I certainly don't have enough data or analysis to make an analytical judgment on what impact that has on credit, potentially in specific cases. And if in the course of those conversations when we're doing our diligence, if we feel there's something that is relevant to credit, we'll disclose it in our rating report for the whole world to see, and then folks can make their own judgment. Investors and policyholders can make their own judgment based on the information we've provided on ESG and how the ESG management, how that entity is handling and addressing and looking at that. And we share that with the market in the spirit of transparency, and then let the investors and policyholders make their own judgments as to whether that's sufficient or not. And that concludes my prepared remarks, and I'll turn over to my colleague here from Marsh. He has some interesting thoughts as well to share, and then I guess we'll open it up to questions after that. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Carlson, and I am the U.S. Manufacturing and Automotive Industry Leader for Marsh McLennan. I also lead ES&G in the U.S. and Canada, and I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm going to get a little more granular, and I am going to stand up and just look at everybody in the back. How y'all doing? Good. I'm usually used to working the room a little bit more, so this is a little different for me, but I think you might hear me today and think that I'm contrary to what Peter's saying, but I'm not, and I'm going to get to that point. Marsh McLennan is the world's largest insurance broker and risk management advisor. As such, we have found that ES&G, climate sustainability, is a boardroom level discussion, that crosses every level of risk. As such, we found and find it paramount for us to be able to help our clients on that journey. Some are in a different place, others are in another place, and we just have to find that common ground to ensure that we're providing risk management services that align with what our aspirations for our clients are. So today, I'm going to talk about our ES&G risk rating tool, what it means, why we built it, and really just try and give somebody an idea of how that works and what it could be utilized for. So I think I have some slides. I just have to. Okay, we're launching. I'm not doing that. David Carlson. That looks familiar. Okay, great. Now, do I have control? Thank you. Okay, no worries. It's not my first rodeo. Okay, so very quickly, we're going to talk about the insights on ES&G. I have it right here in front of me, too, because I can barely see that. Score outputs, controls, reporting, resilience framework, benchmarking, then some differentiation. Why is this tool different than other rating tools? And the insurance applications. So we'll get to it very quickly. Next slide, please. So what I want to highlight real quickly is what the output of the tool looks like, all right? Many people want to see something that they can tangibly hold, and really what the ES&G risk rating tool does is it takes an aggregation of 160 questions under 18 components and gives a score, a relative score of an E, an S, and a G. Again, environmental, social, and governance. It also gives an aggregated score. Under that, we put in, under a risk management framework, we've highlighted controls, reporting, and resilience. Resiliency is something that's become incredibly important to organizations after COVID. COVID exacerbated many things, supply chain issues, insurance issues, liquidity, and as an organization around risk, we felt that resiliency was critical for our clients, and so we added these components in just to help our clients understand how they could actually manage these risks that are identified. Next slide, please. This is an example of the output. Again, our clients see this when they take this, the rating assessment survey. There's 160 questions. I'll get to what built the survey, but then they get a dashboard that highlights red, green, yellow. Everybody loves red, green, yellow. It's very easy. It's very visual, and they can understand kind of where they are as far as world class, or they have things controlled. Perhaps there's places where they need to build a little bit more resiliency, and other places, meaning red, where they really have no controls whatsoever. That's okay. This is a new topic. I got a degree in environmental engineering and science in 1994, and I'm still getting the opportunity to use this. So we're starting, a push in the world around this topic that has many impacts in the insurance world. And these are not new things. And let me give an example here. When you see scores around, for instance, natural catastrophes, floods, fires, other things, that risk has been around a very long time. There is insurance for property, right? Asset protection, contingent business interruption. These aren't new topics, but when put in the context of ES&G, we're seeing that many rating agencies are scoring them. Banks, creditors, capital providers, insurance companies, hence why this standard is becoming more prevalent. Hence why organizations are asking, we need to know where we stand. I will tell you right now, the score is irrelevant in my opinion. It's the actions that companies take when they find gaps. That's what's most important. A score could be anything, right? Numbers can tell you whatever you'd want them to tell you. I mean, you can tweak them any way you want. But the reality is, it's the actions and executable activities that organizations can take to improve their resiliency from a risk management perspective. So hopefully that highlights that. Next slide, please. So you probably can't see that, but basically this is benchmarking analysis that we look at, and we do it across industry, we do it across global region, and really right now continental Europe, the EU is much further ahead than the United States and other parts of the world. They've been much more vigilant in this. Many of the standards, like SASB and others, have been created over in Europe. And you might have heard like the Task Force on Climate Financial Disclosures, or TCFD. One of our sister companies actually helped craft a lot of the frameworks of that standard. But the reality is there are many, many global registration standards out there, not one common theme. And that's, I think, to what Peter was saying, is which one makes the most sense for you as an organization, which one makes the most sense. I don't have an answer for that. But I know in the United States, many of you have heard about the SEC rule that's proposed that would require large publicly traded companies to disclose on greenhouse gases and other emissions and their Scope 1 through Scope 3 emissions. Again, what that really means to an organization in time, we'll find out. But we just like to highlight that when you benchmark and you collect data, it's only as good as what you put into it and how you analyze the data. So this is an example of how we analyze data. Next slide, please. Next slide. So here's where I think some of what Peter was talking about is important. Our tool was created around the different standards around the globe. There are some like MSCI, Sustainalytics, Reventive, S&P Global, Arabesque, and then there's our rating tool. What we've tried to do is take all of those and put them into one context. So for instance, MSCI scores AAA and CCC. Okay, so they have a numeric or an alphanumeric. Then we have others that have numeric scoring from 100 to 0. Then ours is 10 to 0. So you can see there's already some ambiguity there. We get it, we understand. But from a risk management perspective, when you look at risk analysis tools, failure modes analysis, frequency, severity, likelihood of occurrence, companies are used to that. They're used to risk assessment tools in the insurance marketplace, hence why we built ours the way we did. So I'm not going to go through that. That's a lot of information. But there are many standards. We tried to create ours in a way that was, a comprehensive look. Next slide, please. So when we look at the insurance applications, ESG underwriting information, it's promoting standardization of information requirements. The risk tool is a tool to communicate should the client wish to. The framework allows clients to narrow their ESG conversations in areas relevant to them and their industry. When the insurance companies start to ask questions around it, they're going to need to have an answer. Ignorance will not be bliss. And so we're trying to help our clients have some type of answer. One example is on directors and officers liability. We have a unique product that we've created for ESG that has direct relations to directors and officers and potential litigation around greenwashing and other forms that ESG could have. There's over 1,800 claims globally that have been sent out or have been filed. And it's things as easy as books and records and others that can be very, very expensive to organizations that have no endorsements and there's no coverage. We've created a specific coverage for that to help our clients. And there are 2 law firms and I think 8 different insurance companies now that will accept it. If you submit your score from taking the rating tool, the insurance companies will actually provide loss control services free of charge to help you correct those corrective actions. So we're starting to see this push, very similar to other forms of insurance. Differentiated outcomes, carriers can leverage the rating tool to provide enhanced outcomes, as I was just saying. They can discount on premium finance, they can open up greater assets and allow higher retentions and other forms of higher towers and greater forms, and additional capacity as well, because you're a good risk in their view. And then finally, improved understanding of ESG risk profile. It's a correlation between ESG performance and underwriting performance. And it improves the industry's risk understanding of what ESG is and what it is not. Next slide, please. So completing the tool, it's a survey. It's a question, 160 questions. There's 18 themes. We've tried to make it as robust as possible. Thank you. And again, this is just an example of the 18 themes and where we're trying to highlight for clients where they have places that they can improve and what type, whether it's an E, an S, and a G. And then documents that clients use many times are their annual reports, their corporate social responsibility, ESG or sustainability reports, and. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just an example of how people would take it. You actually review the full question set. You complete the key document. This document then gets sent to Marsh McLennan. It gets assessed. We then contact the client and we do a risk assessment review with the client, and then we start to create a strategy around how they address their ESG. It's very simple and very common to any other risk assessment tool. Next slide, please. These are many of the, what we call taxonomy of the 10 different, recognized international standards, whether it's iOS, European Union, Task Force on Climate, World Economic Forum, Global Reporting Initiative. Thank you. I have control now. Now I'm almost done. But just to highlight the different agencies that are out there, and again, to Peter's point, we do have all this on our website. People can go, they can look on our Climate Sustainability Hub, and they can review all this content at their leisure. Now, I'm done with my general comments, and I do appreciate everybody's time, but just, many people ask, this would be made available, but the question sets themselves are broken into many different themes, and we try and color code and try and highlight like where the scores are, the rankings, the weighting of the scores, what they are. Again, all in an insurance context. Everything we're trying to rate is to an insurance perspective. And then these are actually examples of all the different questions. So I just wanted to highlight that there's a method to the madness behind that. So anyway, I truly appreciate the time today. Hopefully that gives everybody an understanding of one risk assessment tool that is out there that we've created to serve our clients in the insurance and risk management world. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, guys, for being here. Just a couple of quick questions. One is, I think you finished your presentation by saying a risk assessment tool, and yet I saw there where it said, I think Liberty Mutual is giving a discount. So is it becoming a pricing tool as well? And then the other thing you commented on, this just, I guess I want to know what, you said companies are asking where they stand. Comparing to what? What other industry outside of insurance is going down the path of tying this to a rating and or some sort of financial incentive?
Good questions. First, it's not a discount. It's performance-based, so they'll use the rating, and they could potentially give premium reductions and or create capacity. So you could get more insurance if they think you're a good risk. Again, it's very similar to, think in the world of workers' compensation. If you have safety management systems and you have a low employee experience modification rate and robust casualty programs, most markets would be willing to provide higher capacity, maybe take lower retentions. That's what the tool does. The tool just creates an awareness of where that organization is. And your second question around, I'm sorry,
comparing to the company, you said companies reaching out to you saying, score us because we want to see where we stand, compared to what?
So probably one of the most accepted standards is TCFD, the Task Force for Climate Financial Disclosure. Most companies want to know where they stand with that, but there are others, like I said, there's SASB, there's many others, MCI, you can use Reuters, you can look at Standard & Poor's. That's the whole point. There is no consistent standard yet. Now, the United States is trying to pass the SEC rule, which will create a reporting requirement that will be frameworked around the TCFD. So if there was one standard that's probably leading out there, TCFD is probably one of them. Hopefully that answers your question? Yeah. Okay.
All right, Senator Gannon.
Thank you. I have a loud voice, everyone will hear me anyway.
So do I.
Thank you. What do you have for coffee? I need that every morning. You are full of energy. And you are an engineer, environmental engineer in science. I'm just a country lawyer from New Hampshire. I represent, I'm a senator, a small little district. So when my people hear these ESG numbers, we're thinking, you're saying to people, you're going to have to divest in your oil, your natural gas, all these terrible, dirty things. But those are the things that are turning my natural gas, our natural gas prices have doubled in the last year in New Hampshire. Our oil, so our turbines, everything we do, transportation costs are going up because people are getting, right now we have 300 years of natural gas in Pennsylvania in the ground. I'm thinking if I could get a big pipeline, I could take care of a lot of my problems in New Hampshire. But what you're doing with these ESG scores, and you can help me if I'm wrong, you're telling my constituents, middle American families, that we're going to have to get away from these natural gas, as I understand it, and you're an engineer, is much cleaner than most fossil fuels, and that's what's heating and turning our turbines in New Hampshire. To me and to my constituents, you're saying you're going to have to just suck it up and double the electric and heating prices, and you're sending all these businesses into that field. Tell me where I'm wrong so I can tell my voters that.
I love your passion, first of all, for the people of Pennsylvania. I'm from Ohio. Go Buckeyes.
Go Buckeyes.
Sorry. The reality is that's not what we're saying. There is an opportunity in every risk. What we're saying is there's a responsible way to transition, and it has to take time, and it needs to be methodical, and it needs to take care of the people. There's an S in there, right? That's societal. That's people. So it's not just, oh, let's go out and change the world. We know you can't flip a switch. An example would be electric vehicles. Every major automotive company in the world is trying to go electrification. Why? To meet ESG standards and reduce what they believe are climate-changing greenhouse gases. The reality is we still need fossil fuels. We still need internal combustion engines. We can't charge all the charging networks in the world without electricity. We don't have enough capacity in the United States to do it right now. If we flipped the switch and had 5 million electric cars in the market, we wouldn't have enough charging stations or electricity to do it. So the reality is we need a transition plan, and it's got to be methodical, and it's got to work for everybody. That's the reality. This rating system is nothing more than showing people where they stand against 160 questions, what they choose to do with it, how they choose to do it, and how often and what they try and correct is up to them as an organization.
Quick follow-up. So would you say that we're going too fast, though? So my energy costs have doubled. My people to heat their home has gone from $450 to $900 a month. And we see all this natural gas in Pennsylvania. We want it. Do you think you're going too fast in this direction? In your electric cars and electric vehicles, I have a little place in Naples. They all lit on fire. So after the floods receded from the salt water, I'm worried that those things, we're going a little too fast in all these directions. Whereas from Bonita Springs to Naples, all these cars are catching on fire. They've got the salt in them. I'm worried that the salt's going to corrode and get into my electric cars in New Hampshire. And in long term, we're going to have a lot of problems, that we're going a little fast.
I think I won't say we're going too fast. I think there's aspirations, and every industry and every market has a different aspiration and a different way that they're approaching it. Some can move quicker than others. I'd answered it that way.
Thank you for indulging me.
Yes, sir.
All right, no problem. Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask my question, I was at the OU Ohio State game where Baker Mayfield planted the flag, one of my favorite memories. I'm sure not one of yours, but we're paying for it now, I guess. Anyway, you said something about if you take this assessment, you can submit your scores to insurance companies, and some of them will give you sort of a roadmap to fill those gaps. Can you give us some more specific examples of maybe companies that have done that and what the benefit has been? I mean, I certainly see the benefit because for some companies, I assume, are so large that making the necessary changes to help their bottom line in the future when certain environmental factors may make it mandatory that they change the way they do things. Can you speak to that a little bit and what benefits can come to companies in that way?
Sure, and it's really not anything new. It's just it's a new risk, and they're putting a new context. So, for instance, would be if you were submitting a score and one of the insurance companies said, okay, we see you have a gap, let's say, in fire protection standards, and you might be in a place that has high windstorm and high fire, and it's been going on. They could say, hey, we can help you create a more robust resiliency plan around your property program. Better fire suppression equipment. Maybe you don't cite a new location somewhere that there's been a lot of wildfires. Maybe they could help you with some, like an engineering assessment in a different part of the country or a different part of that state to find a place that isn't as prevalent as far as those risks. So those are the kind of things that they're doing. It's not a completely new look at property risk. It's taking property risk and looking at it through the lens of that, maybe that environmental impact a little bit better. So that's what they're doing. They're just trying to offer loss control services to fill gaps and help them.
I mean, I'll maybe add just a little bit on that point. From a credit rating agency perspective, it isn't that new. These are issues. If you talk to any Florida insurance company, we rate a lot of them, and I say to them, we have questionnaires. Our approach on the rating side is very different. It's very similar. We go through and we have a diligence discussion with the management team, and we ask them a series of questions. How about this? How about that? What do how do these things impact you? And again, not with a value-based judgment, not to say that that's good or bad. It just is. And how does that relate to your overall risk management framework, and how does that fit into the way you run your business? So, if I I'm having my management meeting with a Florida company, oh, you ever thought about climate risk? They're like, yeah, we've been thinking about it for 30, 40 years because we have hurricanes that blow through here every now and then, and you might have noticed. So it's not necessarily that it's new, but it is getting a lot of attention. And so like any other emerging risk that an insurance company needs to manage to, we get risk registers, we get heat maps, we get ORSAs. I think people here probably are familiar with that. Own risk assessment, a great tool. These things around ESG are now embedded within, particularly for larger companies, and to the extent they are relevant to individual companies, are embedded within their risk management frameworks. And so we ask questions about that, get that information, and get it out into the market so then people can make their own judgments. So it's not about sort of directing traffic. It's not making policy decisions. That's for the people in this room and for folks sitting in the legislative houses and in the executive offices of various governments to make the determination as to what the public policy will be. Our job as a rating agency is kind of like an umpire on the field at the OU game or OSU game or whatever one. I was at the Penn State game last week, by the way. But putting that aside, we call the onsides, offsides, balls and strikes. Take your sports analogy. That's all we're doing. We're just going to call what's there, what we see that's relevant from a credit perspective, but steer clear from making any sort of public policy pronouncements or judgments and driving companies to do one thing or another. Because companies, let's face it, folks, you all know this, companies are very idiosyncratic. They're very different. A variable annuity writer in the Midwest is very different from a natural catastrophe property casualty writer in Florida. And so painting them all with one brush and saying, here are the standards you need to do in order to get a single A rating is ludicrous. And we don't want to drive that sort of behavior. It's not our job. Our job is to call credit as we see it. To the extent we think ESG might be relevant to a credit thing, we'll talk about it. It'll be in our report. We'll disclose it. But it's early days. As my colleague here was saying, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of disclosure that's just barely evolving. The nomenclature, we don't have a common language for crying out loud to even talk about many of these issues because there's so many different tools. The tools you guys are describing sounds great. That's certainly one. And sooner or later, a standard or two will emerge. Kind of like we have RBC, right? That's the standard everybody in this room is familiar with. That's a single common benchmark, at least within the United States, in terms of how life and P&C companies get viewed from a regulatory perspective. We don't have anything like that today. So the notion that would come from a rating agency just doesn't make any sense. So, great, important stuff. We love being part of the discussion. We think it's a very important risk management aspect, but again, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach, and we're going to evaluate these risk factors in the same way we do any other credit-relevant risk factors within the context of the companies and how they operate.
I appreciate that, and it kind of speaks to my follow-up, and that was in this discussion. I mean, you talk about common language. As policymakers, it seems that we're speaking two different languages on this issue oftentimes. And one of the ways that I hear that is my colleague from New Hampshire, whose passion I also appreciate, spoke to this need that this have to. You're forcing this and that. And from what I'm hearing from you all, at least, it's at this point very much a voluntary thing, an opt-in kind of thing. And I wonder if you see that changing at all, or if at this point it really seems to be an opportunity for companies who choose to, who think that perhaps it'll give them an edge in the future, to take advantage of that now.
That's exactly it. You said it very well. This is a voluntary standard. Creating a corporate social responsibility report or a annual sustainability report is a voluntary standard organizations take upon themselves. There may be industry standards, best practices that they feel they need to follow, but many feel kind of like what happened with Sarbanes-Oxley after Enron. This was something that was developed. It was a tool. There was management liability insurance, but Sarbanes-Oxley came along and became, the sledgehammer. Many are equating that to what ESG is. They're looking at that and saying, down the road, it could become an advantage, a business advantage. It could become a business enablement tool for us to become more resilient as an organization. Again, from a risk management perspective, I'm not telling anybody how to manage their utilities or their coal usage or anything. What we're doing is we're helping with a risk assessment tool to identify risk, how you mitigate it. You either transfer it with an insurance product or you retain it. That's what you do with risk. And that's all we're saying and some people may benefit from that and have an advantage over their peers, and others may have a wait-and-see attitude. Very good questions, though.
And I would add, the level of conversation around these topics has grown dramatically. I recall even as recently as 3 years ago having management meetings and saying, okay, so, there's this thing out there called ESG. What are you guys thinking about it? And they're like, what? What does ESG stand for? Like, they didn't even know what we were talking about. Now that is not the case. So, it's an emerging risk. And so like any other risk that an insurance company needs to face, they either need to retain it, pass it on, but it is also an opportunity. That's the nature of the insurance business, is looking out not just at the past history, but looking ahead, looking forward and saying, what are the risks and the opportunities that my organization may be facing, and how are we going to react to them? What frameworks are we going to put in place to address them? And those things are constantly evolving. And so our descriptions of risk management more generally, ESG flows right into that because it's part of the same conversation. You can't talk in terms of risk management for many companies and really talk about, and without at least referencing what's going on with respect to ESG and how you're addressing it. And again, the conversation will continue to evolve, and we'll see where it goes from there. I think transition is a big part of the conversation today. It's probably the single most common area and topic of discussion is how you're dealing with the transition. What are you doing with respect to, what are your stakeholders demanding? What are your investment guidelines say to these things? Do you want to buy oil and gas stocks? Do you not want to buy oil and gas stocks? And you can make that judgment either way, and maybe buying oil and gas stocks might be a good thing to do. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you one way or the other, but you should be thinking about it the way you manage your investment portfolio. I care about that as a credit analyst. I care, are you managing your investment portfolio to take advantage of emerging risks? That's very important because that speaks directly to your ability to pay policyholder claims. So if you're blind or not keeping your eye on the ball in terms of your investment portfolio or any of the things we're talking about today, over time, that could become an issue. But we're not at anywhere near a stage in terms of drawing any bright lines here. It's up to companies and policymakers to figure out what to do next.
Thank you. Senator Thies.
Thank you very much. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for your presentation today. I spoke yesterday on some issues related to ESG. I am incredibly uncomfortable with us identifying risk with something that is so extraordinarily subjective. And when you do things like coal bad, electric good, and we're going to grade you on that, and then we're going to tell everybody that it's a good thing to have this analysis done just in case at some point in time somebody wants to take a look at it moving forward. We're not actually directing traffic, but we're going to figure out exactly how traffic is going. So just in case at some point in the future we really want to direct it, that's what this sounds like to me. And to the point that it is optional, no, it's not. You've got so many of the major investment firms driving this and requiring it of our organizations. I have huge concerns about it. And insurance historically has been famous for looking at actual risk. You look at statistically significant history and make your identification of risk based on what is statistically significant and historical. But nope, we're going to make assumptions about what's good and bad. We're going to prognosticate on what's going to happen in the future, and some of it has some evidentiary basis. Yes, that's true. But we don't know for sure what that actual impact is, but we're going to go ahead and use that as a part of our insurance rating or our bond rating or whatever. And I have extraordinary concerns in a state where our fuel costs have gone up so dramatically. They're trying to shut down a pipeline that's essential to our Upper Peninsula. I have major concerns, and where we are considering perhaps wrapping our arms around this, we need a lot more information, and we need it not to be subjective. Thank you.
Comments?
I would agree. Subjectivity. I would agree. Subjectivity is a challenge, and we've talked about the lack of a universal standard. But quantifiable risk data is important, and I know that we shouldn't opine on things that are so subjective, and it is hard to say what does 1.5 degrees C really mean in Argentina versus Texas. I understand what you're saying. I truly do. Our position is risk management is to try and quantify those things that are already quantifiable, meaning property risk, casualty risk, places that you can look and say, yeah, we understand that. Now, how the insurance world wants to underwrite against that, we don't control that. I understand what you're saying completely. And many clients aren't interested. That's great. They'll be on their path. Those that are, I think what they're trying to do is just get an understanding of where do they sit, and it has become a position of their organization that they do want to address it however they choose to address it. But I do welcome and appreciate your comments, truly.
And I would agree as well. That's exactly the point. It's not our job to do that, not to link it to credit risk. Just there's no data there. To your point, you're absolutely right, and we agree. And that's why we're taking the approach that we do. We're not coming up with scores. We're not saying good, bad, or indifferent. We're just looking at it and saying, what does this, if any, can we draw a line here? And if you read any of our reports, you'll see, quite honestly, there's nothing there. There's nothing to say for exactly the reason you described. We do not have the data yet, right? But I think highlighting the issue because it is so much in the market. Our constituents are asking us, investors are asking us, whether, we can have a different public policy debate about whether that's appropriate or not, but we don't want to be in the middle of that. We're just going to get the information, put it out there, and then let the constituents decide on their own.
I'll give you an example from risk management, not about telling clients whether to forego greenhouse gas usage, coal, oil. What we do is, we just released a report. We found a correlation between the experience modification rate of workers' compensation and a good S score. So we're taking, again, quantifiable data, not ambiguous, not ethos, not theory. We're saying we see where companies that have really good safety management systems typically have a really good S score and have low experience modification rates. When you take that to an insurance underwriter, they like that. They understand that. That's quantifiable. That's what we're trying to do with the data. We are certainly not trying to tell a company how to invest, how to use gas, how to not transition. That's not our role. Our role is to use risk management in the context that our clients can understand it. Hopefully that helps.
But I understand what you're saying, but your green, yellow, red puts an opinion on what's good or bad with all of the questions that you're asking, many of which are highly subjective and have no foreseeable relevance in actual risk assessment. So why are you asking the questions in the first place?
First, the survey is taken by the client. So those are their responses to the questions. So when we do something...
But you're asking the questions.
Absolutely, based on 18 different global standards that they're willing to take. They don't have to take it. They don't. And I get it. I understand what you're saying, but if you look at something like greenhouse gas, if they can quantify it and they want to respond to that, they can. If they can't quantify it, we tell them, don't answer. If you don't have an answer for it, don't answer. And then it just becomes something, do you want to address it? Again, it's a risk management perspective. And when you try and transition an organization, when an organization is trying to transition their business, they just need to understand that. Believe me, I understand your trepidation. Believe me, I'm an environmental guy, but I'm also a business. I work in the manufacturing and automotive industry, and I see this every day. I completely understand where you're coming from, truly. There's a place for common ground, but there is a lot of data that hasn't been developed. There's a lot of information that needs to be developed, and there's consistency that does have to occur. I completely agree on that level, absolutely.
All right. Well, I don't think we have any more. Oh, one question.
I can't get my mic on there. Is it on? Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, thank you. I'll be brief because I came in late and I don't want to speak out of context here, though, but I appreciate the ladies' questions here. In our session last night, we had, look, I'm just going to say what this is. This is just crypto-Marxism. And I assume this is all based on climate change. Is that where we are with this? Is that accurate?
It's not all based on climate change. Not all of it.
But the terms you're using, greenhouse gases, 1.2 degrees Celsius, that type of thing, that's not climate change language?
Some of that is, yes, absolutely. Some of that is.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that the foundation where you're coming from, though? Is the climate change philosophy? Because that's what ESG is, societal. As I understand it, where you invest your money, for example, the state of West Virginia, we pulled out of BlackRock because basically you get there's a punishment system for investing into oil and gas and these fossil fuels, they call them. Is that something that you're talking about here? I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from because I know what ESG is, peripherally, and You know, I've studied enough this to know the terms you're using, and it's climate change, right? That's what you're talking about. So a lot of us believe, maybe not here, but many American citizens believe climate change is a hoax. You know, CO2 is plant food. That's all it is. It's impossible for mankind to raise the temperature of the earth so much that it creates everything out of kilter. And so this to me, I think, is moving toward a punishment system for those that don't fall in line with the climate change philosophy. That's where this ESG is going, and you know, this is critical theory infused into the business world, infused into the culture, and it's a controlling system. That's where this is headed. It's already that way in the banking system. That's where it's heading in the banking system. If you don't invest so much of your money into certain companies, you get a bad score, and that's where this is moving towards. So I just want to make that. I just want to clarify that. That's what this is. This is, you know, look, I'm not calling you a Marxist. I'm just saying that climate change is the home.
Thank you for that.
It's the home of new Marxism. That's what it is.
We're going to give them an opportunity to respond.
No, I just want to make that point.
This will be the last question, so thank you.
No, I'm a realist. I'm also an optimist, and I understand your points. I truly do.
Well, I know you, and you're good at agreeing on that, and I appreciate that. But
I just want to say, as our organization, again, it's about, for us, it's risk management. Whether our clients agree, whether they believe in it or not, if they're asking for us to provide risk management advisory services, we have built this tool to address not only just that, but there are many risks within ES&G that have lived under corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility was built when there were slave labor going on. And there was, you know, a lot of other things going on in the globe, responsible organizations that...
Slavery and climate change are not...
No, I'm just saying that there were risks that were out there that organizations wanted to address. And ES&G has many risks that already exist, like the E. There are a lot of natural catastrophes and hurricanes. What we are trying to do is help clients get a grasp on what the insurance underwriting world is starting to tell us as a broker, that, hey, we're going to start baking this into our underwriting because we're going to underwrite our portfolios. So in order to help clients assess the risk, this is what they've asked us to do. So it's really just from that perspective. I'm not here to say one way or the other what climate change is or is not. That is something that I pride myself on not trying to say, oh, I believe in this, I believe in that. It doesn't matter what I believe. It's what my clients are asking.
It does matter. It matters what you believe.
Well, look, I appreciate the passion on this.
Yep.
and look, and so, and I really do. So if we have any questions in the future, because I want to give time, we are on a schedule, and so I want to give time to the other presenters. But if anybody has any questions moving forward, you can get with NCOIL staff, and we can reschedule and hopefully have you gentlemen come at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So look, our next topic and presentation will be on retention and recruitment of insurance talent. I just think that, you know, everybody in the building, everybody in the room knows how difficult it is at this time to retain and recruit talent within the industry. So I'm glad that NCOIL is discussing this, and I look forward to discussing it further. I want to thank, former New York Superintendent Greg Serio, now with Fonseca, for putting this topic on our radar last year in Scottsdale. And with us here today, we have and I know I'm going to mess this up, Spotty?
Whatever you want. Mr. Chairman, whatever you want to call it, it's fine with me.
With the National Alliance for Insurance Education and Research. And so you can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for having me today, Mr. Chairman. I sure hope this is a little bit less of a controversial topic than the last one, but that shall remain to be seen. I am the Director of Emerging Talent Programs for the National Alliance for Insurance Education and Research, which provides educational programs to insurance industry professionals across a wide spectrum of job roles, including underwriting, brokerage, life and health, and consultancy. I myself came through to the insurance industry through college. I majored in actuarial science and risk management, and was very fortunate as a first-generation college graduate to have someone in high school share with me the opportunities that existed in the risk management field, specifically as an actuarial student. And if you have not been aware, insurance doesn't necessarily always get the I'll just say it, sexy type of job description that most other industries do to young folks, and certainly not an appealing exposure in movies or press. So while after spending a few years in the insurance industry, I have dedicated the past 15 years of my career to helping young people and folks in different industries find what I believe, and what many others in this room also believe, is quite a rewarding and stable career. What we have found is that the industry as a whole is facing, like other industries, many key challenges. And on the screen you'll see here 6 of what I believe are the most important. Back in 2009 and 2010, Deloitte and McKinsey respectively produced reports regarding the aging talent within our industry and the significant talent gap that was going to emerge 15 years down the road and longer because of those entering retirement. Fortunate to be involved in organizations like the Griffith Insurance Education Foundation, which I know many of you are familiar with, that brought the industry together to figure out some ways to help solve this talent gap, which projected around 400,000 available job opportunities in the years 2022 to 2025, which we very quickly are in. We also found some key challenges regarding generational gaps and what younger workers wanted to experience in their careers versus what some of their more experienced generational counterparts were creating as work environments. Certainly over the past few years, COVID has created challenges with going to the office, or as I like to look at it, as an opportunity to create a balance for younger generations that are looking to maybe not go into an office every day. The Great Resignation has also created some challenges, although I read an article today that we're maybe entering the period of great remorse, where folks are not actually finding the jobs that they thought they could. So that is one that I'll have to study a little bit more when I get back. I mentioned the visibility, certainly not many knowing that a career in insurance and risk management, actuarial science exists when they are young. And so, that's probably one of the biggest challenges, the perception of our industry that we face. And another challenge being the diversity of our industry and really lacking an opportunity for young people to see themselves in careers in the industry, whether that's from a gender or race perspective or other versions or other characteristics of diversity that we may consider. We've also found that the insurance industry and many of the companies have been lagging behind in terms of creating work environments that are considered equitable or inclusive. So many firms, including David's firm to my left, have been spent many years creating workplaces that promote the opportunity for folks to feel like they belong, to be listened to, and to really create environments that people want to be part of. From my perspective, the most important issue for a company to tackle before we start considering recruiting new talent into the industry is that of retention, creating work environments that people don't want to leave. We have suffered as an industry from the idea that people come and people go, they just job hop, and it's okay to pay a recruiter 20 to 35% to bring somebody else new in, which I think is a waste of money for any company to have to do that, when in fact we could look internally, ensure that we are creating environments where people want to stay. So some of the things that we look at or talk to companies about is making sure that the environment is equitable, making sure that all employees have the opportunity to be successful, and that really looks at a number of different variables, whether that's opportunities for learning and development, networking through engagement in professional associations, ensuring that we have the right technology in place so that our jobs don't seem as cumbersome as maybe they could be, and access to information and communication, that the information that is needed to do one's job is readily available at employees' fingertips. We also think that the best way to create environments where people want to stay and ultimately a better environment where we can recruit people into the industry is making sure that people feel safe and respected, that really it's an inclusive environment. The opportunity to share feedback and know that that feedback is going to be received and listened to, that it's okay to understand someone's point of view but not necessarily agree with it. Looking at what we tolerate within our organizations, how people are treated, whether we are allowing that behavior to continue, or whether that's on a recognition perspective, promotion perspective, ensuring all employees are being paid favorably and fairly. We also think it's very important to make sure that employees have a voice, much like the constituents you all represent. You listen to what they have to say and bring those ideas and opinions to the jobs that you all do. Likewise, we think companies should treat their employees in much the same way, ensuring that everybody has a voice, and when someone does use their voice to express new opportunities, new products, or opportunities for growth within an organization, that employers are doing that. And many studies have been done to show that diverse teams, whether that is ensuring different backgrounds, socioeconomic, race, religion, gender, companies do perform more profitably and have higher cash flow. So we do want teams or companies that we work with to ensure that that their teams are representative of the people that they serve and the people that they want to bring into their organizations. So what we're doing and what many organizations within the insurance industry have done is create programs to allow for engagement of younger generations and individuals who work within other industries to consider career and risk management and insurance. Particularly at the National Alliance, we took one of our industry designations, the Certified Insurance Service Representative designation, which it's an intermediate level education program. It covers everything from personal and commercial lines insurance, life and health, workers' compensation, and the risk management process. And reconfigured it so that a career and technical education teacher within a high school business pathway can teach these courses to high school students and expose them to the wonderful and sexy careers that exist. When students earn this designation, they are employable out of high school, and we have many independent insurance agents and mid-sized brokers ready to, and insurance companies ready to hire these high school students upon high school graduation. We also see it as an opportunity to showcase to students their post-secondary opportunities. Nearly 100 colleges and universities within the United States have a risk management or actuarial science major, minor, certificate. And we want to make sure that students are aware of that as an option. We do expose them to the varied career paths, as I've mentioned, but at the very core of this, regardless of whether a student pursues a career in risk management or insurance, our program does give some consumer education to the student, specifically on those personal lines, auto, and homeowners. And we've been very pleased to hear feedback from our students that they can also go back to their parents, who are actually the purchasers of those products right now, and help their parents understand the policies that they've been purchasing. We enhance all of that exposure with an opportunity to engage with the industry. So we are fortunate to partner with organizations like the Independent Insurance Agents of America and their state associations to get folks in the classroom, and then also offer work-based learning opportunities, whether that's a summer or after-school internship, a shadow day, or just the opportunity to have a speaker come in and share what they do. These are the components of our program. We offer 8 learning modules through a learning management system, video lectures where we bring in what I will call mid-level talent, actors and actresses who have yet to make the big screen to deliver the scripts that we have written and incorporate it with graphics and live footage. We also really help the teachers who are teaching this. They do not have to have an insurance background, although several of our business CTE teachers have worked in agencies before, so there is some knowledge. But we do all the lesson plans, learning guides, tests, assessments, answer questions, and then we provide also professional development for those teachers in the event that they also want to earn their designations through us. Right now, our program is located in these 7 states. We are an Austin, Texas-based company, and so our program did start in Texas. We're currently in 8 school districts there. Michigan was the other state we started in initially back in 2019-20. This year we expanded to 7 of the Birmingham City schools in Alabama. We're in Georgia, Oklahoma, Illinois, South Carolina, and hopefully soon to be Wisconsin. And so our hope is that not only are we bringing students into the industry, but making better consumers of them. I'd also like to point out that we're not the first organization to think about how do we expose young people to careers in insurance. In college and for 10 years of my life, I was part of an organization called Gamma Beta Sigma, which is a collegiate business fraternity that promotes the ideas of risk management, careers in risk management to college students. And this year they chartered their 100th chapter at a university, which is pretty amazing. The Griffith Insurance Education Foundation has also been doing this for many years through their ambassador program, which they administer through the college students. And my colleagues at the Independent Insurance Agents of America, through their Invest program for nearly, I think, 3 or 4 decades, have also been using industry professionals to go into high school classrooms to expose students to careers in insurance. And many other organizations, HBCU Impact, which specifically goes into historically black colleges and universities and was started and co-founded by an individual in this room to my back right here. So there are so many important initiatives going on in this space, and I have to say that in my 20 years in the industry, as a student, as an underwriter, and in working to get students in, it has been one of the most rewarding things that I have done, and I have been super, proud to wake up every day to know that we have an opportunity to really change the course for some of these, for these young people, and I appreciate the opportunity to share about it today.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any questions from any legislators? Representative.
Not really a question, just a comment. So I am a past board member of the National Alliance, CISR, and we have been working even through PIA and everything to try to get young people in this industry. So I really love this program, and I really would like to talk to you about how soon it's going to come into Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely. What state are you with?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay, great.
Yeah.
We were on the phone with a PIA
Today?
When we first started talking about it. Yeah, so fantastic. Yeah, we're also working with the PIA in Indiana, and they'll be starting in the fall. But I like to make sure that we're in there before I put the actual block on the screen to say we're in that state.
And all my employees are either CISR or CICs.
Oh, that's fantastic.
All right. Representative Lampton.
Thank you. I appreciate these efforts. I know in our area in Ohio, all employers everywhere are desperately looking for good workers. Just if you could describe some of those the entry level jobs that are available in the insurance industry, not just sales, but if you could, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, there are really a few, right? There are a couple, but they're the most widely, widely needed jobs. So you have the entry-level account executive or account administrator at agents and brokers who are helping the producer or the account executive manage the client. So whether that's through issuing certificates or managing the policies, that's one, right? And so we've seen many of those individuals start in those jobs and then advance through the agent system. Another one, specifically at an insurance company, would be kind of like an underwriting assistant, which helps in the very similar fashion as on the agent side to an underwriter. We've seen many opportunities within call centers for, whether you're working at a personal lines insurance carrier to be able to help those individuals who are calling in with their claims after a, natural disaster or an auto accident. And then on the claims adjusting side, I think that oftentimes even for those of us that are considering careers in insurance, it's one of the most overlooked paths. But the opportunity, some of the technology that the insurance companies are coming out with to evaluate claims and, serve their policyholders are pretty cool. And I think we have an opportunity to engage young people from a technology perspective and their interest into some of those roles as well. The only one I would say from my perspective that only still needs that 4-year college degree is that path to being an actuary. A very high level mathematical degrees needed. But otherwise, on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you would see most all of these jobs that I've mentioned that a minimum requirement would be a high school diploma.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope this is on. Okay. I'd just like to say I'm very excited about what I'm hearing from you, and I just learned from a very reliable source that there'll be a lot of retirements in the next 10 years. So how do we engage? I'm from Michigan, okay? So I'd like to know, first of all, where are the programs, and then how do we engage our university? We have Oakland University that I could probably get them to look at this, so give me some information.
Yeah, sure. So first, we're at Wilson Talent Center. It was the first school, I think, that actually implemented and had our first designees, our high school students graduate with the CISR designee, and they are among the best and brightest students that I've seen. What we do is we're putting in place a software that allows us to manage for each school the engagement with the industry. So it would be a lot for us to manage those schools in each of those states with the individuals that want to get involved. So we're putting in place and paying for software so that each school and the industry can engage together and know what's available. Many of those students in Michigan specifically, though, are pursuing additional education at Ferris State and Olivet that have very strong risk management programs. And in fact, both Olivet and Ferris State are also part of our university program, and they use our curriculum, which is completely free to them. Actually, at Ferris State, I think we will have quite a number of students graduating with our more advanced degree or our advanced certification, which is the CIC, because we give waivers and they take our exams before they graduate. So
let's talk.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Look, thank you for the great work you do in the work of your agency. So you guys are really doing some positive things, and hopefully we can bring some of that to Louisiana.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Look, if anybody has any other questions moving forward, you can reach out to Will and NCOIL, and they can help you on that. Our next topic is a presentation on insurance developments in the federal home loan banking system. And with us here today, we have Eric Harr, who is the Director of Governmental and Industry Relations at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas. And I would just tell you that this is an issue that could be on our agenda next year in the form of model legislation, but for now, Eric will just provide us with an overview of the issue so that we can be aware of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Thank you to members of the committee. I also want to thank Tom and Will with NCOIL for inviting me here today. Appreciate being with this group. So some of you may be familiar with the Federal Home Loan Bank system. Others may not. We do lend money to insurance companies. Closer? Closer. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about a possible legislative remedy to a situation we have found ourselves in. So, quick review of the Federal Home Loan Bank system. We were created by Congress back in the 1930s. Originally 12 regionally placed federal home loan banks spread around the country. There was a voluntary merger a few years ago, so there are now 11 of us. A GSE, government-sponsored enterprise, very well regulated at the federal level by FHFA. And what the federal home loan banks do is we lend money to insurance companies, banks, and credit unions. Typically, an insurance company will borrow money from their regional federal home loan bank, and then they will use those proceeds to purchase mortgage-backed securities or treasury instruments for the benefit of the insurance company. We fund our loan demand not through taxpayer dollars, even though we're a GSE. We borrow money in the global capital markets, so we sell debt, just like Treasury sells debt, or a corporation might sell debt to investors. And then we take those hundreds of billions of dollars that we borrow in the global capital markets and we lend it out to insurance companies, banks, and credit unions. No taxpayer money is involved in the federal home loan bank system. We have operated for 90 years safely and soundly. A couple other components. Each FHL bank, as we're known, is a cooperative. That means insurers and other financial firms will choose to join their regional federal home loan bank. No one forces them to do that. They will join the cooperative, and then they have access to federal home loan bank lending if they are a member. Members purchase a nominal value of par value stock. It doesn't go up or down in value, but that's part of how we capitalize the FHL bank system. Each of the federal home loan banks is profitable through its course of business. And what we do with most of our earnings is we turn around and we pay a dividend, a cash payment, to each of our members every quarter. So no individual or group of investors is getting enriched by the success of the federal home loan banks. The money flows back into those local communities. We also fund a grant program with 10% of our earnings that has done a lot of good in support of affordable housing and community development initiatives since 1990. Big takeaway for this group, please, is that the federal home loan banks, under federal statute, we are a secured creditor. So we lend money, and we are fully collateralized every time we lend a dollar. We cannot abide a credit loss or a dollar loss on any of our loans. That is mandated by our regulator. It's important because we're a government-sponsored enterprise, and it allows us to lend money to insurance companies at very favorable rates. So we lend a dollar, we take collateral that backs up that loan, and then that is the kind of the relationship that ensues. This is Federal Home Loan Bank system-wide lending to insurance companies, banks, credit unions nationwide since 2006. Nearly $1 trillion in loans outstanding during the Great Recession. But the numbers, they ebb and flow just based on the needs of our members. And we maintain a system that serves the borrowing needs of our members. This is insurance company membership by year beginning in 2006. You can see the steady increase in membership, both life insurers and PNC companies. Many of them have seen the value in joining their federal home loan bank. They're not all borrowing from us on any given day of the week. About 50% of our members are active borrowers on any typical day. The others maintain their membership, though, in the system because next week, next month, next year, they might have a need for our liquidity, and so they retain their membership in the system. This is insurance company lending from the federal home loan banks by year in billions of dollars. You can see the steady increase to over 500. I can't read my own slide there. Is that 546? 146. 140. I wish it were 546. $146 billion as of the second quarter of this year. Each federal home loan bank has a different membership profile. So we lend to banks and thrifts, credit unions, and insurance companies. About 19% of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas's membership base is comprised of insurance companies, but the system-wide, nationwide average is 8.5%. We're kind of an outlier on the high side, but I want to give you an accurate picture. It's around 8.5% of each Federal Home Loan Bank's membership comprised of insurance companies. So here's where we come into the need for legislation. If a federal home loan bank lends money to a bank or a credit union and that institution fails, we have protections under federal law. We are able to step in and access the collateral that they pledge to us without delay or hindrance. That allows us to quickly resolve the transaction, and the receiver, the FDIC, National Credit Union Administration, they do what they do to wind down the entity. But because insurance, of course, is regulated at the state level, we don't have the same federal protections that we do if we lend to a bank or a credit union. So in receivership, there is a chance that we might be stayed or delayed or prohibited from accessing the collateral that an insurance company has pledged to us. Now, we believe that in time we would access our collateral, but because there could be a 1, 3, 6 month or longer delay in us accessing the collateral that's been pledged to us, we have to make an accommodation with regard to that. And so what we do is we have terms, our lending terms are less favorable for our insurance company members in states where we do not have legislation passed at the state level protecting the Federal Home Loan Bank in the event of a receivership or a rehabilitation. So we have proposed, the Federal Home Loan Bank system has proposed legislation at the state level. I remember 8 and 9 years ago when I worked for the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka, going to many NEIC meetings where this was a new issue at the time and talking through this issue. Worked on legislation then. Now that I'm at the Dallas Bank, we're working on it in our 5-state region. Other home loan banks have addressed this in all of the states where they're operating. Some of the federal home loan banks are still working on it. I believe it's relevant to everyone in this room. What we would like to do is clarify that a receiver will not delay or deny or stay a federal home loan bank from accessing collateral that's been pledged to us. And then we promise to create a framework for the receiver to resolve the transactions as quickly and as equitably as possible. And then that allows us to lend money on more favorable terms. Not to give you a bunch of numbers, but if we lend money to a bank and they pledge treasuries to us, any of these types of treasuries for this duration, we will lend, for example, 98 cents on the dollar of collateral pledged to us. So they pledge $1 in collateral to us, we give them 98 cents. But if it's an insurance company in a state where we don't have protections, they pledge $1 in collateral to us, we will give them 95 cents on that dollar. So the collateral terms are less favorable, and that is just not good for any of the parties involved. So we have proposed a framework. Won't go through all of the numbers that you see here. My attorney colleague at the bank drafted this, and I'll be happy to provide this to anyone who might like it. But within 10 days, the Federal Home Loan Bank will provide a timeline for resolution. We will provide options to the receiver with regard to possibly renewing a loan or restructuring loans if the insurance company is not failing, but they're going into rehabilitation. And then we have some promises, some assurances that we will have access to the collateral pledged to us, not a nickel more that's owed to us, but only what we have loaned out. And we will not be delayed in a receivership for that purpose. And then a few other legal components to the proposal. A couple definitions here, and then I share this final slide with you. If you see a dark-colored blue state, that is a state where legislation has been passed that takes care of this issue for the benefit of insurance company borrowers and the federal home loan banks that are domiciled in those regions. If you see light blue, that means there is legislation that is active or to be proposed in 2023. In addition to what our regulator has said, let's get conformity and uniformity on this issue across the 50 states and territories. We believe it's just good business for insurance companies across the country and to the benefit of the Federal Home Loan Bank system, which is not necessarily the priority of this group. It's the insurance companies and their policyholders, but we believe it's a mutually beneficial and very important relationship. So I sped through that for time, Mr. Chairman, but I'm ready to answer any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions from any legislators? All right. Doesn't appear to be any questions, so
I'll be
look.
happy to return in March, as you indicated, if that's the wish of the group.
All right, we'll set it up with Will and make sure that that happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Our last topic is the discussion and consideration of readoption of our model laws. Per NCOIL bylaws, all model laws must be readopted every 5 years, or else they will sunset. The models scheduled for readoption today are on the app, the website, and the start of your binders on page 140. Yep, we have them here. I know the amendments to the Model Act to support state regulation of insurance by requiring competition among rating agencies are being proposed by Ohio Senator Bob Hackett. Accordingly, we'll handle that model separately before moving to others. So, Senator Hackett.
I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here.
All right, you go.
I'll be brief, as these amendments are straightforward and non-controversial. The model appears in your binders on page 140, and the amendments are on page 141. This model was originally adopted 5 years ago to promote competition among rating agencies, as there was a problem identified that some statutes require insurers to be rated by one specific rating agency rather than simply requiring a rating from a rating agency that meets certain requirements. That is why the model sets out to define a competent rating agency at that time. The model recognizes that decisions about which rating agency to choose should be based on management's evaluation of the perceived strengths of each rating organization as it relates to their markets and business models. There shouldn't be a requirement in statute that requires an insurer to be rated by a specific rating agency. However, an issue recently arose that we think requires some simple amendments to the model. Essentially, what happened was that all of the major rating agencies and those that are listed in the model have been approved and registered as nationally recognized statistical rating organizations called NRSROs by the SEC. And this wasn't the case when the model was originally adopted. And remember, as an NCOIL, we're a fierce protector of the state-based system of insurance regulation, so we didn't think it was proper, and still don't, to essentially defer to the federal government what is deemed competent. So according to the amendments to the model, now make clear that a competent rating agency is one that is either an SRSRO or one that is nationally recognized rating organization that maintains business practices that includes requirements set forth in the model. This way, the model recognizes the business reality that all rating agencies that insurers use are NRSROs, but it leaves open the avenue for any other nationally recognized rating organization to operate in a certain manner and be deemed competent. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have, and I want to thank Will for his help on this as we develop this amendment. So I look forward to the committee's support, and it passed unanimously the first time.
Thank you, Senator Hagan. No problem. All right, we have some interested parties that would like to make some brief remarks. I think we have Burke Coleman, Chief Regulatory and Compliance Counsel at Demotech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Brown, I'm Director of Government Affairs for AM Best. We just want to thank Senator Hackett for sponsoring the amendments to the model, and also want to thank Will and Tom for getting us to language which we think improves the model very much, and we would just urge the committee to adopt the model as amended. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Burt Coleman. I work as Chief Regulatory and Compliance Counsel at Demotech, Columbus, Ohio-based rating agency, and now a nationally recognized statistical rating organization. Just wanted to thank the committee, thank Senator Hackett for originally sponsoring this Model Act in 2017, and now sponsoring it again for the readoption with the amendment. Demotech believes this is an important Model Act to promote competition among rating agencies, which in turn promotes competition in the broader insurance marketplace and enables consumer choice. So thank you to the committee. Thank you, Senator Hackett, for your work on this. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. Any questions from any legislators? All right. We have no questions. I entertain a motion to readopt the act.
So moved. So moved.
Entertain a second.
Second.
All right. It's been properly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Model Act is readopted. All right, we have three other models scheduled for readoption. The Model Act prohibiting consumer reporting agencies from charging fees related to security freezes, the Credit Report Protection for Minors Model Act, and the Credit Default Insurance Model legislation. Those appear in your binder starting on page 143. Are there any questions related to any of these models? All right, if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to readopt those three models.
Motion.
We probably moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those three models are readopted. Do we have any other business? All right, we have no other business. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.